Okay, my first question is, how can policymakers deal with not in my backyard attitude, which PME had mentioned in his speech? And the second question is, though it's regarded to be good to give paternity leave, my concern is whether it will affect our productivity.
And my question is, in your opinion, what is the political effect of the increasing number of migrants in Singapore? Thank you.
We have a suite of policies that support mothers having families having children. I just want to ask, what about unwed mothers? How do our policies support or disadvantage them? What about equality, and have we studied their needs and the kind of social economic background they come from, and they actually need some policies that will support them?
Maybe let me start with some of the shorter ones. The NIMBY. I start with NIMBY. There are two things that we need to do to tackle NIMBY issues. The first is obviously one of attitude. You cannot just blame people to say that, oh no, why you don't care about the elderly or the old. Some of them, it's not so much that they don't care. Some of them is because they genuinely do not understand some of the issues associated with this. For example, if you cite an old folks home nearby, many people do not even know what goes on in an old folks home, and they may have all sorts of misconceptions. So in order to overcome that, we have to reach out and actually bring people to the old folks home, even to understand some of the operations. But the other thing about NIMBY is that, if I go back to my earlier theme about anticipation, if we can anticipate some of these social needs better, then we would have pre-planned some of the white spaces into the new or the old estates, so that you know that in time to come, when you need those spaces for social purposes, there will be less of a competition for it. But of course, having said that, hindsight is always perfect. The question is, to what extent can you anticipate the future social needs? And we should continue to try as much as we can. Paternity leave and productivity. I always like to clarify that we shouldn't look at productivity as adding more hours or more inputs. The economic definition of productivity is not just about adding more labor hours or capital. It is also about getting more out of the same amount of inputs or the time. That is real productivity growth down there. So I'm not sure that we will necessarily have a conflict between paternity leave and productivity. If we make that argument, I suppose then that issue would also affect maternity leave, but we don't seem to make that argument. Okay, but the real issue is not just about maternity leave and paternity leave. The whole issue of procreation is not just about tangible incentives. I think that part the government can do so much to help people with the cost of education, housing, so on and so forth. Those are what I call the tangible issues. There are another set of issues that we all have to play our part in the community and so forth, and those are the intangible aspects. Those issues have to deal with the value system, the way we hold priorities and see priorities in our own life, and so on and so forth. Frankly speaking, if you ask anybody who has started a family, very few will tell you that they calculate until the nth degree how much does it cost to bring up a child or even to marry a wife. I think sometimes we forget about that. The other part of the conversation is that the joy of family life, the joy of parenthood, of course there will be sacrifices, of course there will be pains along the way, but there are also joys that money cannot buy, and we sometimes have to take a step back from our busy schedule and ask ourselves, why are we working so hard for? Ultimately, is it not for our families? Is it not to provide for our families beyond fulfilling our individual aspirations? I always remember the story of this young boy who asked his father, how much are you paid per hour? He said, a couple of $100. A couple of weeks later, the young boy took his piggy bank back to the father and said that, can I buy an hour of your time? Can I buy an hour of your time? I mean, instead of earning that few $100 more, the young boy just said that, please, I appreciate you much more than the $100, a few $100 that you earn to provide me for the tuition. I just wanted some time with the family. And those are moments I think we shouldn't let go in that rush to pursue our goals and so forth. So whether is it tangible policy issues or the softer part of things, I think we have to work on these two together if we want to have a real solution to our population challenges down there. Jasmine asked about unwedded mothers. I won't put all the unwedded mothers into one category, because for us to deliver help effectively, we actually have to look at the respective cases. Our policy is to never disadvantage the children. The children are really innocent. So as far as the children are concerned, they should get all the same opportunities as any other Singaporean children would be. But when it comes to helping unwedded moms, you have to look at their cases, each and every one, uniquely. Because some of them may need a job, some of them may need financial help. But I would say many of them would need a guiding hand to help them out. Many of the social issues in Singapore is not just about money. It is about having enough volunteers, having enough good people to come forward to be role models, to help those people in need, to get them out. It is easy to make a monetary contribution regardless of the amount. It is more difficult but much more important to get a volunteer to come forward and help that person on a prolonged basis to get them out of the difficult situation they are in. Some of those families that I've seen in the rental housing, in the interim rental housing, housing is a symptom of the problem. The deeper problem has to do with their financial management, getting them to stay in school, getting the adults to hold on to a job. If all these are not resolved, then even if you give them a better housing, it doesn't solve the problem. So that would be how I see the issues down there. No, migrants is really a last resort. There's always a three-pronged approach to making sure that we continue to sustain a quality life for our people. The first prong is to make sure that we have a strong Singaporean core of workers, and this has to do with how we encourage marriage and parenthood and so on and so forth. That's one prong of our approach. The second prong has to be how we structure our economy to boost productivity, either by revamping our processes, investing more capital and so on and so forth. Only when these two cannot, then we are complement with having some immigrants. And we can only take in immigrants as much as the society can accept. You cannot move at a pace which the society cannot accept. And that must be. So between these three options is that delicate balance of finding that sweet spot of what you can do in your policy sphere. I don't think it's predetermined as to where is that sweet spot between making sure that there is a strong Singapore core, encouraging marriage and procreation, families and so forth, increasing productivity, or bringing in some migrants down there. Finally, if I may just round up the session, I think I'm always told that governance is like flying a plane. You need fine controls, watch the wind, watch the weather properly, have a radar that tells you what's coming along. But at any one time, it's also very difficult and disconcerting for the passengers on the plane if you make sharp turns here and there. But it is like flying a plane, constantly watch for what's coming ahead, anticipate them, prepare your passengers for the turbulence ahead, communicate with them, and chart the course of travel that you think will best get you out of trouble. If not, make sure you adjust and constantly adjust along the way. And that would be the only way that we can make sure that the plane is kept on a stable course to reach our destination. Thank you very much.